morning, everybody, and welcome to another of our Wealth Tech Talks from the Wealth Mosaic. My name is Stephen Wall. I'm founder of the Wealth Mosaic. If you don't know who we are a digital vendor directory and knowledge resource built around the wealth management industry, and with a heavy focus on wealth technology. We run the Wealth Tech Talk series on an ongoing basis. It is our live webinar session, which talks around all things wealth technology related. Today, the focus is distribution of structured products under MifidII product governance. I'll give you a quick introduction to the topic in a minute and introduce my guests and the panelists and the experts today. Before I do that, a little bit of notes for the session. So the session is scheduled for 1 hour in length. It'll be mostly a discussion on the topic with myself and the guests, but there is time for you to put in questions, written questions, and there will be a Q&A at the end, which we will do our very best to answer whatever questions come in. As a viewer, you are able to write in questions. You can't speak, but there is a format in the session in the device for you to write questions in. The session is being recorded, and that recording will be available both on Bright Talk and on the Wealth Mosaic after this session. And throughout the session, quickly, we will be showing slides just to support the discussion. So let's get into it. So structured products, right? This is an area that has obviously seen significant growth in recent years. Of investors have sought new ways to access the markets and to deal with some of the challenges and complexities in the market. Whereas traditional investments have maybe been impacted by those complexities and that volatility, the nature of structured products means that they can be adapted to the specific needs of individual investors. So we have that wonderful topic today of personalization. However, obviously, as an investment product, they need to take into account rules and rules around protecting the investor, particularly considering what we have in Europe now under MIFID II and the focus on product governance. So through the session today, we're going to be covering elements such as PRIIPs, product governance, ESG, costs and charges, and different elements. But all the way through, I think we will be considering how technology can really support in enabling and supporting your needs in the market. So if I now give a chance to my panelists to introduce themselves, we're joined by Eyal Leibovitz, who's the president and founder of Futora, and by Joachim Alpius, who's responsible for regulatory implementation and product governance at Handelsbanken Savings and Pensions. So Joachim, if I could turn to you first, could you just quickly introduce yourself, your role, and if you have the inclination, your quick sort of opening statement to the topic?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, as you said, my name is Joachim Alpius. I work for Svenska Handelsbanken, retail bank in Sweden. I do regulatory implementation and product governance for financial instruments. I also a very active member of the FinDatX technical working groups, responsible for manufacturing some of these templates that we use to share data. So I'm coordinating the Mifid and the sustainability group, responsible for the EMT and the upcoming EET. I'm also chairing the Swedish Structured Products Association, and I'm a board member of USIPA. And this is indeed a very important topic. All these regulations have clearly shown the increased requirements to share data and to do so in a machine-readable format, and automation is key.
Okay, thank you very much. Great background, and it should be an interesting discussion with that skill set and focus. Eyal, to you, a quick introduction to yourself, please. Who you are, what you do, and some opening comments on the topic.
Sure. So my name is Eyal Leibovitz. I'm actually from the vendor side, but very involved in the regulatory space. So I founded the company called Modality, a RegTech company, and lately a new company, Futora, which deals with the trading, click and trade like structured products. I've been involved in PRIIPs on the industry side and with the regulators and implementation side. Then on MIFID, lately on the sustainability related regulations. I'm also part of the FinDatX, this setting the standards, and also part of USIPA at the European level, also UK SPA. So also having like a similar experience.
Thank you both. So for the audience, I think we should have a good discussion with that skill set. My job is really to get the guys delivering their expertise. So hopefully I can do that today. Quickly, a question has just come in from someone listening in. Rather than me type it, it's nothing to do with the topic. How does someone share this webinar with a colleague? Well, send them the link and they need to be registered to Bright Talk is quickly the answer. So hopefully that helps. Okay, let's just get into it, guys. From my perspective, Mifid's been around now since 2018, I believe, and PRIIPs obviously too, active in both the UK and the EU. So it obviously applies to various financial instruments, including structured products. So, Ayal, why are we talking about this topic now? What's the sort of backdrop to this discussion today, and some of the elements around that?
Yeah, good question. So indeed, Mifid is live since the beginning of 2018. MifidII with everything or most of what we're talking about now. However, there are many different changes and more complications. Let me I would use quickly a slide here, to clarify that on the PRIIP side, it's just becoming more complex. UK PRIIPs is now diverging from EU PRIIPs, and from the end of this year, you would need a different KID, if you're distributing in the UK. And also the EU, is going through changes into the existing PRIIP KIDs with the methodology and so on. So lots of complications there. Then on the product governance side, true, it's it's available or it's live since the beginning of 2018, but we see lots of issues with the way how the market is working these days. So I'll try to, later on we try to drill down into this. ESG and sustainability related regulations, these are kicking in soon. So already from, the 2nd of August, so about like 2 months time, there are different amendments to Mifid, and also in the insurance side, the IDD, the Insurance Distribution Directive, all sorts of amendments related to sustainability that would affect also structured products. And finally, costs and charges, now they are really on the radar. So they are live since 2018, but since there are some, I would say, not very high quality in the market these days with the cost disclosure, already the regulators and ESMA at the beginning, and now the different member state regulators, the national competent authorities, are putting this really topic on the radar. So they already are doing some supervisory visits, sending some letters to distributors and so on. So the topic is rather old, but now it's on the radar of the regulators. So this is why we believe now it's really the time to pick up and get these sorted out.
Yep. Fantastic. Thank you for that, Ayal. Joachim, from your perspective as I don't know if I should call you a practitioner, but perhaps that's the term. Is this the case that, not so much that the goalposts are moving, we might say in England, and the targets therefore being shifted, but we're in a sense, the market is evolving, and this is now getting deeper in terms of how you apply what's been learned over the past few years. Would that be how you see it?
Yeah, I would say we've done a pretty decent job in harmonizing our ways of handling data, for instance, within Europe since 2018. But there are still some definitive challenges in the usability of these standards. So it's there are early adopters, and there are some that have still some way to go. And again, we still do investments outside of Europe, so there's still a big challenge in global harmonization and usability. So still, it will be a topic for a few years to come.
Absolutely. Ayal, we said that we would obviously intertwine technology through this whole discussion. So there's obviously harmonization in the regulatory environment, but still perhaps a lot to learn as it embeds itself. Where in general is technology in terms of being applied to this topic area? I mean, is it very embedded? Is it really a work in progress? Is there still much to do?
So, there was lots of work already being done, but still lots of work to be done and under progress at the moment. So one of the areas of technology clearly, you know, is to streamline, how the market is working, and for that we've been active. It's, you know, institution what is called today Findatex, in order to agree on standards on you know, how you share data between manufacturers and distributors and so on, in order to streamline all the regulatory information flow within the industry. Okay, so basically around this, you know, we're touching the PRIIPs, that's the EPT. We're touching, you know, different Mifid elements on the EMT, and upcoming the EET, on the ESG related regulation. So the technology here is a key, in order to facilitate, you know, the regulatory obligations in, you know, in a cost-effective way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I said at the beginning, and indeed your first slide sort of touched upon it, that we would break down the session into different areas. So let's start to do that. Let's look first of all at PRIIPs, right? Clearly a key topic in this area. Eyal, can you sort of explain what the complexity around PRIIPs is, and, you know, how that is perhaps changing given some of the things that are happening in the world around us?
Yeah, sure. So just to touch base on this. As I mentioned before, you know, today we have like one type of a PRIIP kit, okay, which is aligned between the EU and UK. That's not going to be the case anymore. So a product that you distribute, you know, in both, I would say, regions, you would need two separate kits, and you need actually to be implementing the two separate systems. That's, or, you know, one system that supports both kits. They are different by methodology. They are different by the content. Okay, so that's, you know, a divergence in the market. Just being declared, you know, in the UK by the FCA on the 25th of March. Okay, and it's the deadline for implementation is the end of the year. Also on the EU side, there, you know, the kit is undergoing lots of changes. So all these changes are on the manufacturer side. Okay. However, the distributor must realize, okay, if the client is a UK client, they would need like one type of a kit, and if it's an EU client, another type of a kit. Yeah. So, you know, life is just getting a little bit more complicated around this. Yeah. But this is basically what is important for the distributor to understand. Yeah. Not really drilling down into too much of the methodology, which is on the manufacturing side, but just realize, okay, it's going to be two types of kits, of PRIIPs kits. Yeah.
And Joachim, is this well understood in the market, and is the market well underway in terms of preparation for this, or are they still waiting for FCA definitions of how things should work and what needs to be done? What is the status of this journey?
I would say it's hopefully known to the market now, where if all implementations have been concluded, I would guess no. And I think one of the challenges is that we have a current sort of EU RTS at the moment, knowing we'll move into RTS number 2 in Jan 1st. So that change is, as Eyal mentioned, is underway. Whereas the UK PRIIPs approach doesn't have a firm date, or it has a firm deadline, but you're free to engage that already now, which means there might be the old EU RTS 1 being used in parallel with the UK PRIIPs in the UK at this stage, it's really there are 3 different versions until we pass Jan 1st. Then it's only 2.
So it's a moving feast, and are the rule sets likely to be radically different, or is it, you know, minor adjustments between the various EU and UK formulas?
Yeah, I think Eyal, you're better positioned to speak about the differences in the UK versus the EU, as we have no PRIIPs-related business.
Yeah. I mean, what happened is that the UK FCA did all the changes on PRIIPs version 1. So basically all the changes on PRIIPs version 2, or most of the changes on PRIIPs version 2 done in the European Union are not applied to the UK. That's one source of change. Then the most significant change in the UK is that they stop having performance scenarios, which is, you know, a very significant part of the kit, and instead it's going to be performance information narratives, so text, you know, describing factors affecting the performance. So this is quite you know, significant change, and is not also well defined. So now at the industry level, we're trying like to align, you know, and have like similar or wordings, because you know, comparability is key in PRIIPs. So these are like the two main, I would say, differences, yeah, between the UK and EU, and these are quite significant, you know, differences.
Yeah, I think also it's fair to say that one of the reasons why I think UK moved and did what they did was because it's evident that we will have a review of level 1. So basically, there will potentially be a remake of the whole PRIIPs thing, not on level 2 as in a technical standard, but revised level 1, which would take a few years. And I think UK regulator thought, why implement something that we know will be changed in a couple of years' time? So let's make a simplified version until we get there, and that's why we are where we are.
Understood. Fantastic. Let's move to product governance. Joachim, I think you'd like to run through a few slides here, just in terms of introducing the target market and distribution strategy.
Yeah. So just to get the bits and pieces. So basically, the regulator has given us a few criteria by which we describe the target market, and these are the typical 5 we see on the screen here: client type, knowledge and experience, risk tolerance, ability to bear losses, and objectives and needs. So within FinDatX, we gathered and came up with the EMT standard to basically get this in a machine-readable format. So 30 plus data points make up these 5 criteria, as we see here, where the manufacturer basically sends their view downstream through the value chain, telling distributors or helping distributors to ensure that their clients are bucketed and assessed to be compatible with the target market defined. So yeah, maybe we can move to the next slide. So basically, it's all about defining the positive target market, and the regulator also requires manufacturers to specify a negative target market, being type of clients or maybe their objectives and needs and characteristics that are not compatible with the product. And so the left-hand side here depicts the green positive target market, and on the right-hand side we see that negative target market isn't necessarily the flip side of positive. So basically, being a manufacturer, not knowing the end clients, there's only so much you can tell about whether the product is compatible. Some would need to be assessed by the distributor in terms of, because some of these criteria, if you recall from the previous slide, are diversifiable. So risk tolerance, for instance, we cannot, as a manufacturer, say that a product is not compatible with end clients from a risk perspective, because it's depending on a more holistic approach for that client. It's decided on the distributor side. So that's why we have this sort of neutral area in between of this out of target market, or potentially in target market area. So we could move to the next slide maybe. So tied to the target market, we talk about distribution strategy, and distribution strategy from a legal perspective basically means which of the Mifid services do you as a manufacturer see compatible with the distribution of this product. These 4 are then execution only, or execution with appropriateness test for complex financial instruments, or through investment advice, or through portfolio management. So manufacturer again defines the target market using the 5 criteria and advises which of these or all of these services to be used for such distribution. And then we can move to the next slide. So we see the flow here is basically it's a downstream process where manufacturer sends target market and distribution strategy information, now using the EMT, this self-regulatory standard we created within MifidII, to distributors, helping them to understand the characteristics of the products and to help them ensure that the distribution, basically ensuring the right products to the right clients. So on the left-hand side, we see here where the value chain consists of Mifid firms being required to express their target market through, basically, in practice, the EMT standard. And on the right-hand side, we see situations where the manufacturer isn't a Mifid manufacturer. It might be non-European, or it might be that, it could be could be products where we don't have product-related costs, for instance. Then the EMT isn't typically used, but it could be non-financials. Could be corporate finance. It could be IPO transaction or non-European transaction. Then we have a situation where the distributor would be sort of left alone in taking care of the target market aspects. Basically, they are in a position where they need to act with a manufacturer's spectacles, if you wish. So they need to determine on their own the target market. And in the left-hand side, they assess what they've been given, and they potentially refine according to their client segmentation and knowledge.
Fantastic. Joachim, I think before we go to the next slide, I mean, this is new, Joachim. So, I mean, and this is something that's sort of well understood already in the market in terms of a process, or is it something that needs to be educated and applied from here on in?
I mean, it's been sort of clarified through Mifid II. I mean, there were parts of this were evident even in Mifid I, but it was clearly more detailed under Mifid II. So all the criteria and so on. And I think it's the target market aspects. I think we've managed to harmonize decently in Europe. So I think we come later to the cost and charges side. It's more challenges there. So I think this is clearly an established standard, but that doesn't mean there aren't challenges. And I think, as we said in the beginning, the usability of this is now getting. I mean, we all tried to be just fulfilling the regulation back in 2018, and now we're getting to the fine tuning and the automation or the lowering cost or the validation process or the feedback process, because as distributors we're also required to feedback to manufacturers in the event we deviate from their advised target market, or if we widen the target market in terms of a distribution strategy. Or so it's I think this is sort of level 2 in terms of
and thinking of the broader topic in terms of the role of technology, to what extent is these processes automated now, or is it still a sort of manual effort to categorize and feedback and identify exceptions and other elements?
Yeah, I mean, if I just start and maybe I would complete, I would say that I mean, just thinking of the EMT standard, it basically consists of 100 data points. So for each ISIN a manufacturer produces, we have hubs and platforms out there with millions of financial instruments, each providing 100 EMT data points on a daily basis for the structured products industry. So that's a lot of data. It needs to be optimized. It needs to be processed. And we should keep in mind also that not everything we say through the EMT standard is, I mean, it's constantly changing, and we might even do corrections, and it means that the recipient of these EMT data sets would need to consume everything that's been said throughout the previous year in order to say we come to later on the cost and charges side. But that's a lot of data, and it will only increase now when we get into sustainability. So
yeah, those other elements are added in. Okay, super. Eyal, I don't know whether you want to add elements to what Joachim has just mentioned, or whether you want to move into how the target market is defined.
Yeah. So maybe first, just to, by the way, there's like I see a question coming on the neutral. There is a question whether there's a definition of a neutral target market. Maybe Joachim, you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean it shouldn't be seen as it's not. I mean, the legislator only talks about a positive and a negative target market. So neutral is basically an EMT setting, and basically it means the manufacturer isn't able to determine whether this characteristic is compatible or not compatible with a certain client base, because it might be that it's only known when we can give an example of I gave one example with risk tolerance. So basically you cannot say that a very risky instrument isn't compatible with a certain client, because if used in a small amount, or if it has an sort of correlation which is negative with the portfolio, it would sort of lower the risk maybe. Or you might have say a product aimed paying coupons aimed for people seeking income. That doesn't mean that it's sort of you wouldn't be offended as a client with a capital growth ambition if you get a coupon. So it could be equally compatible with you. So it's up to you. Here you have a message. We send it as manufacturers to distributors, and it's up to you, distributor, to determine whether it's compatible with your client. So it can end up being positive or negative depending on the client and the holistic perspective.
Super.
Hope that helps. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you for the question for whoever asked.
So maybe, maybe also for sake of time, is in terms of, a definition, like, every distributor is supposed to have some rules, on the target market of different products. And we know in structured products, this is getting a little bit more complicated because clients, it's not only about like the product type, but there are certain features that suddenly make the product a little bit more complicated, or clients maybe they have a good understanding in the product in general, but not in a certain feature that is quite new, or is making the product more complicated. So every distributor in the product governance committee needs to make its own thinking. Here I'm just presenting like a theoretic example. If we have the most popular product, the autocallables, of course we could differentiate, for example, what is called the knowledge and experience. We of course have to classify our clients according to their knowledge and experience, and we could say, well, if we're talking about a Warsaw, or a Phoenix, so the coupon barrier is different than the trigger of the autocall barrier, or when things, more features are getting more complicated, then maybe we need a higher level of knowledge and experience. So we need this kind of internal rules. Now, what's happening in reality here, I would just show as a sample few slides from how it looks in our system. We are trying to automate that part, so having those rules defined. And then what's happening in reality, this is like a sample process. You are receiving a target market from the manufacturer, like in this case we have a worst of autocall on Apple and Amazon, and the manufacturer might say, well, this is also for from its own perspective, this is also suitable for investors with very basic knowledge and experience. But you might be, as a distributor, you might feel different, or you might have decided different, and then you need to refine or adjust the target market. Usually you would do it in one direction, meaning you would only narrow down the target market the other way around of extending the target market. Yeah, suppose you have received the target market from the manufacturer and you believe, okay, the manufacturer is too strict and it's too narrow. You would like to widen to extend the target market. In many cases, you would be, let's say, worried about doing that from the compliance or legal perspective, because if a client complaints comes later, you cannot go to the manufacturer and say, okay, there's a client complaint. I mean, the manufacturer would say, I told you not to sell to this kind of client, right? So what we see is that those refinements done by distributors, usually they're in one direction, just narrowing down, like in this case, you're removing the basic investor from the target market received from the manufacturer. Now, the challenge that we see, at least, and this is, okay, slightly a smaller text here, but you could see when sending like an RFQ to different manufacturers and then receiving the target market, you can see that the target market, at least in the area of structured products, was not finally fully harmonized. Every manufacturer might think slightly different on the same product. And that, of course, adds to complexity. You, as a distributor, now needs to handle that and see, what happens if my client, does not fulfill, is not in the target market supplied by one manufacturer, but it is by the other, okay? However, let's say the target, the quote that you got is better on the other one. What should you do? So it adds some complexity here, and we're trying to deal with that complexity and trying to automate at least the entire process, okay, of these target markets. So yeah, so this is just a taste, yeah, on this element here around the market.
I see two questions in the chat there. Just quickly could add to that. So basically, structured products are per se so combinations of things with embedded derivatives. So all structured products are per se complex financial instruments. And then the other question, why isn't there an EMT for OTC derivatives? Well, basically, the EMT standard is meant to standardize data sharing, and OTC derivatives are bilateral agreements between two parties. So there are no other parties interested in what we have just concluded in such an agreement. So there's no obvious reason why we would share that data to someone else.
Yeah, thank you, Joachim. Ayal, did you want to add anything to this question?
Yeah, I mean, maybe like the typical business, of OTC derivatives, is bilateral. Manufacturer selling to the end client. So there is no like distributor in between. EMT, right, is sent from the manufacturer to distributor that then needs to use it to know the target market and so on. So this is why it wasn't planned to this case.
As we've discussed, I mean, there's clearly a lot of complexity here, right? The data points involved are significant, and harmonizing it between various parties, given they might have different sets of standards and frameworks in terms of how they view one thing versus another, and all different client types. A lot of complexity. But let's add to the complexity and think about something like ESG. So this is obviously a theme that's coming. Regulators have adapted to it and presumably will continue to adapt to it. Joachim, can you describe some of the sort of upcoming Mifid and IDD sustainability preferences related to this, so we could sort of kick off this into segments?
Yeah, so just quickly, I mean, there are a number of regulations related to sustainability that is rolled out or will be rolled out. So we already have level 1 SFDR in place. So we already have to be transparent from an entity perspective, informing clients of the sustainability aspects of products. But if we have a a structured products perspective here today, then we are not directly affected by those regulations. However, we will be indirectly, or we are already indirectly affected, because SFDR would would hit us if structured products are used within portfolios that are required to be transparent about sustainability aspects. But as been said before, in August, when giving advice or when providing financial advice under Mifid, then distributors would need to make sure that their clients' potential sustainability preferences are being considered when giving such advice. So basically, then we understand that there is a new requirement for manufacturers to talk about a lot of new data points related to sustainability in order for distributors and advisors and portfolio managers using such financial instruments from August and onwards to being able to determine whether their clients are compatible or not. So that will drive us into these new set of requirements. We within FinDatX tried to gather in a new template, the EET. Not to scare anyone, as of now it consists of 580 data points.
As of now, and in a year's time, what's the likely number?
Well, just to take it one step back, maybe we assessed the situation looking with a sort of 18-month forward lens. So basically, from August, only 50 to 70 data points would be mandatory at this stage, and it will be rolled out subsequently. So
okay, so another area of complexity, and perhaps also an area where we will see change. Eyal, how, from a technical perspective, from a flow perspective, will the industry be able to comply and, add those elements of standardization and, management to this process? What is the approach they need to take?
So actually, what's exactly what Joachim mentioned. Industry was trying to create the new format, this EET format. I'll use like a slide just to explain like the flow. So from one side, the distributor, the advisor is expected to receive like the sustainability preferences from the end investor. Okay, and on the other side, the manufacturers, including manufacturers of structured products, are expected to create this EET file with all sorts of sustainability characteristics of the financial product. Okay, and then the advisor, or, the person doing like the suitability, would need to match between the investor sustainability preferences and the sustainability characteristics of the financial product. So again, I'm just using another slide. So apart from, you are working on a structured product. So apart from receiving like, the quotes, the terms of the product, etc., as we discussed, you need to consider the target market. And now you also need to consider the sustainability characteristics you would, receive from the manufacturer, the different sustainability characteristics, of the financial products, and you need to realize the preferences of the investor, and do the match. So that's, again, adding more work and complexity into this process. And for this, the industry has created the EET in order, again, to streamline and to feed like systems like this, where the person doing the suitability would be able to do that match on its own. Yeah. So again, but this is not live now. It's going to start being live on the 2nd of August. Okay, and we will see also how the market would evolve. Yeah, because still lots of unclarities around these questions. How this should work and so on. Yeah, we are in direct touch with the regulators and trying to get all the unknowns.
Yep.
You could say that.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. I mean, if we think of the EMT, the data is shared among financial market participants, basically all required to handle this data. Whereas under sustainability, it's the sort of non-financial corporates that are yet to be forced to express themselves in this way. So we need data from someone who's not required to provide the data at this stage, and who's not. It's not common for them to share data in self-regulatory templates. So it's a very different challenge, I would say.
Interesting.
So I see questions again.
Yes.
I'm not sure whether we. Yeah.
Feel free. I mean, absolutely. If you want to answer the questions now, let's do them.
Okay, quickly then. So, will the European EU distributor be able to distribute PRIIPs where the competent authority mentioned in the KID is not from a member state? Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, as long as the PRIIP KID is produced in accordance with the PRIIPs regulation, that's all fine. So, I mean, there's nothing in the way for a US manufacturer governed by a non-European competent authority to fulfill European regulation and do a proper PRIIP KID. That's not very common though, very rare. But yes, I would say. And the other question, for UK distribution, would the custodian bank of an elected professional still require KID? And I think, I'm not sure if I interpret this correctly, but if the product is sold to an end client being retail, they would have to fit the target market, regardless of whether the custodian bank is professional or I'm not sure whether maybe I misunderstand the question, but PRIIPs is for retail. Mifid affects professional and eligible counterparties as well. Then, however, we have just in February this year the Mifid quick fix, which was invented during the pandemic to ease the situation. And under that, we no longer have to provide cost and charges transparency to professional clients, for instance. And there are some easing in the product governance process as well.
Yeah.
Maybe I could add another point. In the UK PRIIPs, they were like trying to clarify what are the conditions for a product to be considered as not being sold to retail. Okay, and they said there are like 3 criteria. 1, you have to clarify in the marketing material, okay, this is not for retail, professional or eligible counterparty. Then also in the distribution strategy, so, you know, instructing your channels, your sales channels, you do not sell it to retail. And the final and the third like point, which is problematic, and I would explain, they say, well, the minimum denomination or minimum investment should be £100,000. So as long as you fulfill the 3 requirements, this means, okay, that the product is not meant for retail and you do not need a PRIIP kit. And now the question is, it's raising lots of questions because there are many products that are meant to be sold to professionals only, okay, especially on the derivative side, but they might not be sold under denominations more, than 100,000. Maybe you would like to sell 50,000, but to professional. So then, would it mean that still you need a kit because you do not fulfill like the third condition? So this is how it is written right now in the UK PRIIPs, and we believe that wasn't like really the intention of the FCA. We believe the intention was maybe to deal with a situation where you're listing a product on a venue, on an exchange, and you lose control of who is buying the product. And to ensure it's not retail, you need the minimum denomination of 100,000. This is what we believe, but it's not written this way in the UK RTS, okay? And we plan to either harmonize at the industry level about this, or again, it's still to be discussed, or maybe to go back to the FCA and ask them to clarify, okay? So again, related to what this question is about, suddenly you have a transaction which is lower than 100,000, and you might interpret that as, okay, that means retail, please give me a kit. Hopefully not, but we'll see.
So there's another question there, and I hope I could just say a few words, and maybe I'll want to complete that. So So it's from the EET and ESG requirements, but other biggest challenges besides retrieving data. And yeah, of course, retrieving data, so lack of data is a big thing. But there are several additional problems here. So basically, there are a number of research houses, sustainability research houses out there, and they, since the Vodafones and all the corporates out there aren't required to provide this data in an orderly format as of yet. Basically, these research houses all read the quarterly reports and all try to figure out how sustainable these companies are, and they provide services letting us as financial market participants know. Yeah, but they don't necessarily do the same conclusions, so they have very different opinions. So basically, retrieving data, yeah, that's number one, or first in the value chain. Number two is sort of opposing views or conflicting data or incorrect data that needs to be unified. Maybe you have data from one provider, but lack of data on some areas, so you need to turn to someone else, and they have conflicting data on some of the corporates you already have. So it really requires automation, unification, and this is where I think Ayal would want to complete the story, because this is a task maybe each distributor shouldn't try to engage on their own.
Yeah, and maybe to add another challenge related to structured products. Well, you know, it's not really well defined. Okay, what is a sustainable structured product? Actually, later today we have another meeting at the USIPA, yeah, trying to harmonize definitions of sustainability in the context of structured products. Derivatives in general and the structured products in particular are not well defined, and we're trying now to harmonize suggestions coming from the French industry, from the German industry, Belgian industry, and so on. We're trying, and I don't know if we would be successful. Yeah, I mean, it could also be that there would be, a different concept in different member states. Of course, that would be a pity, but it could go there. So that's another challenge. It's not very clear, what's the definition of a sustainable structured products. We are now trying to harmonize that.
Yep. Difficult to build a system when there is no harmonization of terminology and methodology, and different providers provide different data sets with different viewpoints. Fantastic. Okay, let's move on to costs and charges as a sort of the final area to look at here. Joachim, can you sort of describe the current industry flow in terms of ex-ante costs and charges? I think there's a slide pointing to this that you can give a little bit of description to.
Yeah, so if you bring that up, that's great. So so basically we have the ex-ante, so basically the pre-contractual document or pre-contractual information. We need to make sure clients are aware of the likely costs they will encounter when buying into the financial instrument. And we have the EMT for the product-related costs. So basically, as a distributor, you would retrieve the EMT, as you see here from the left-hand side, and you would potentially be aided by someone like Futora to figure out what that means for your end client, because the legislator says that we need to be personalized here. We should express the actual total cost and charges expected for this specific client when they buy into this product. So basically, we would need to assess. In this example, Futora would then know from each distributor how the service costs are related to the various products. So basically, each product type might have different service costs. There might be certain service layers from which the actual client is engaged. They might have certain terms. We have certain different channels, countries of distribution where the situation is different. where the service layers are different. So all this logic would need to be applied using also the EMT to express ourselves versus end clients in a sort of pre-trade perspective. That's what we try to show with this picture. So I guess if we move along.
Maybe I would express so yeah. So you know, let's say first, like in the KID, in the PRIIP KID, you also have like a cost disclosure. However, it includes only the cost embedded inside the product. Of course, if you have extra costs, I don't know, custody fees, buy-sell transactions, whatever, it's outside of the product, then according to Mifid, you need to aggregate and show like the full picture of the costs, and then this is facilitated, of course, by technology. You could define the different costs, and then being able really to generate like a report, from a system, and show to the client, okay, we have the product related costs. These were you got them like from the manufacturer, and then you added your own extra fees, in this case like custodial costs, and being able to show that to the investor like pre-contractual, before they actually buy the product. So that's the ex ante. And then we have the ex post. Perhaps Joachim, you could further elaborate on that.
Yeah. So ex post is basically after. So we are required to give end clients a periodic reporting. So at the end of the year, basically, we are required to show the actual cost and charges incurred by that client, and we should report total cost and charges in sort of monetary units and percentage terms. And basically what this shows is that in order to do so, we need to figure out what was the potential ongoing costs or entry and exit costs for each and every day we owned a financial instrument throughout the past year. Or when we transacted, what was the one-off entry and exit costs for such days, for such products, when specific clients traded. And in order to fulfill this, we actually need to consume all those EMT files for all those financial instruments that have been touched or owned by clients over the past year. This means a lot of data again. And in this area, there's clearly room for improvement in the industry, working with this data and the usability of data. So this is a cumbersome process.
Maybe again, I would show some of it. So the thing is, you're presenting, the investor the costs, beforehand. Then clearly, what happened in reality later on might be slightly different. First, like on the entry costs. Okay, when you went on trading, right, the market is moving maybe in your favor or not. Okay, and the final entry costs was different than what you have presented, and this is why you would need to report usually once a year backwards, okay, on the actual costs that were that really happened. Then of course also if you have clients where they exit early and then they were bearing some early exit fees and so on, you need to report those to your clients. What we've seen, like, I would say, some challenges like in reality, where that I would say, we are being approached by distributors. Now they need to create this annual ex post, cost and charges report. And we're going through all the different trades and the products, and then we see costs are missing. You go to the manufacturer, you say, well, okay, I need the cost of this product that was traded at that day, etc. the manufacturer already forgot about that, or is not, doesn't have really the motivation now, to make the effort, because the trade has been done, the P&L has been recognized, and that might be a little bit too late. So, the way to deal with this kind of process is not wait for, of course, the last minute, beginning of next year, and start collecting, aggregating, and fixing, but throughout the year, when trades are happening, book, the costs, hopefully as much automated as possible. It's not always possible because some of the manufacturers are not fully automated. Okay, so you need a way, to book that on your end. Okay, remember that, and then you are ready for your ex-post cost and charges report. Later, it's much more challenging, in that respect. So and again, the EMT has been designed, of course, for these cases, and also has been designed to retroactively report, okay, on costs, because we know how systems are working. We know it's not only about like mistakes, but in reality, this is the reality. You think the entry cost would be 2%, then the market moved like against you, and you finally charged only 1.5%. So then you would like to, or you need to say it was only 1.5%. Okay, so this is how also the EMT has been designed to allow like backwards reporting. Okay, the problem is not all manufacturers are fully automated, and the obligation is on the distributor. Okay, it's not on the manufacturer, it's on the distributor. So better take care of that during the year and not just wait for the beginning of next year.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, we are almost pushing the hour. We have 2 minutes left. So firstly, to the audience, thank you for the questions you've sent in so far. If you have any more, we have 2 minutes to answer them. Before we do that, Eyal, this process, looking at it now, clearly needs systemization technology. It needs a framework to manage it. Otherwise, there is risk and there's complexity and there's cost from people being involved in the process. So what is your sort of concluding statement as to what the industry needs to do, perhaps to throw technology at this? Maybe that's the wrong term, but apply technology to this. Is there sort of a concluding statement that you would make?
Yeah. And of course, the bigger your operation is, the more you need the automation. When you start your distribution business and you're working with 1 or 2 manufacturers selling, a product each month, and so, maybe you could manage manually. But when you grow, more manufacturers, more products, you streamline, smaller tickets, but more, and so on. We know, how platforms are growing. Then you cannot avoid automation. That's facts of life. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, gentlemen, I think we're about to hit the hour. So let me thank you both for your time. Very insightful. Thanks for your expertise and sharing that with us today. There was a question as to whether anyone can get access to the slides, but I think in general, if people want to reach out directly to Eyal and Joachim, I'm sure they would appreciate the communication. So, gentlemen, thank you for that. And for those listening in, thank you for your time. And we look forward to speaking to you again soon. We wish you all a good rest of the day.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.